So the regular season is behind us. The NFL playoffs are here. We're ready for Wild Card Weekend. A slate of 4 games between Saturday and Sunday. 2 AFC matchups on Saturday, 2 NFC matchups on Sunday. And I am here to break it down just a little bit and, more importantly, offer my picks for this Wild Card Weekend. I'm going to start off with the first game on Saturday. The Bills, the 5 seed, the wild card, traveling to Houston to take on the AFC South champ Houston Texans. The line for this game, the Texans are favored by 2.5, which I guess you're going to give a team when they have home field advantage in a playoff game. But you're talking about a Bills team coming into this matchup that was 6-2 on the road during the regular season, with a running game spearheaded by Devin Singletary and Frank Gore, and also Josh Allen, combined with a top-flight defense that almost is one of those situations where you look at him and say, this is a team that is potentially positioned to do a little bit of damage in the playoffs, maybe similar to a 2017 Jaguars team. Under head coach Sean McDermott, this is the second time in 3 seasons the Bills have made it to the playoff dance after having gone all the way since 1999 without having a playoff appearance. As far as for the Houston Texans, they're going to be without Will Fuller in this game, which is bad for them, but for a Texans defense that has struggled, getting J.J. Watt back in the fold just in time could potentially be a little bit of that needed medicine, grandpa's cough syrup, if you will. Concern about this game, though, with the Texans is even though it's at home, they were at home last year when they lost in the wild card round. The Texans are going to be looking to erase some previous playoff disappointments. Most notably, if you think about it, for the different times they've made it to the playoffs under head coach Bill O'Brien, the one playoff game they actually won, if you remember, was against the Raiders and Connor Cook, not Derek Carr as the starting quarterback, Connor Cook. So you have a lot of things here. That Texans offense is a lot different when Will Fuller is in the lineup. The problem is it feels like he's never in the lineup. So are the Bills and Tre'Davious White going to be able to key in on DeAndre Hopkins and slow down Deshaun Watson in that Texans passing game? One of these types of games that you look at it and you say, if you prioritize defense and running game, then the Bills certainly have the advantage. But Carlos Hyde has been good on the ground for the Texans this season. Going into this matchup, I like the Bills here. I don't like the history of Bill O'Brien and the Texans in the playoffs. I like the structure of the Bills and how they're built for some success in January. So even with a brand new quarterback, so to speak, in terms of the playoffs with Josh Allen, it's his first playoff start. I'm going to take the Bills. Give me the Bills to win 16-14. Then we go to the Saturday night game, the other AFC matchup. The wildcard Tennessee Titans travel to Foxborough to take on, Gillette Stadium, whatever, to travel there to take on the AFC East champion New England Patriots. The Patriots are 4.5-point favorites, but you're going to see a lot of momentum behind picking the Titans in this game, and it can make some sense. Ryan Tannehill has certainly come in and been an upgrade over Marcus Mariota and has changed the dynamic of this offense, and as a result, this team quite a bit. Derrick Henry has been a beast this year. A.J. Brown, the second-round pick from Ole Miss, the wide receiver, went over 1,000 yards receiving. And then also when you look at recent history, the last time these two teams played, if you remember, was back in 2018, and the Titans didn't just beat them. The Titans dominated them. They whooped that ass. Granted, to Tennessee, I think it was 34-10. Like, they put a grade A ass whooping on them. So there's a lot of things pointing to while the Titans were able to squeak into the playoffs and had to squeak into the playoffs based off of what you saw out of the Patriots at the end of the season, losing the last couple games, looking not quite up to snuff, especially on offense. Lack of explosive plays, a lack of playmakers. Tom Brady starting to look old. And in general, this offense lacked a lot of pop this year. They'll have Sony Michel for the playoff game. How effective is Julian Edelman going to be with some of the injuries he's battling? You know, you look at this offense and you say, okay, where are the big plays going to come from and who's going to step up and who's going to make a difference? And I just know that it's there. That said, though, they still have a really, really good defensive unit. Stephon Gilmore was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate this year. A really well-coached defense. Even though you could say, well, they beat up on a lot of really bad teams, and that is true. And then when they face teams like the Ravens and the Chiefs, they got beat. That is also true. Like if you look at who they lost to outside of the Dolphins, you're talking about losses to playoff teams, the Ravens, talking about the Chiefs, talking about the Texans, and then the Dolphins in Week 17. If you want to focus on that loss, you could also sit there and say, well, Miami's familiar with them. Miami had everything to play for in that game in terms of the fact of they want to close the season out with some momentum. The Patriots are kind of coasting and backsliding in a little bit. And, sometimes those types of things can happen in week 17. You get caught looking ahead a little bit, which might be exactly the medicine that Bill Belichick needed to kind of rally his team. When you think about Belichick and Brady in the playoffs throughout the years, the only two times they ever got eliminated in their first game to be one and done was 2009 and 2010. Think about that. They've been in the playoffs every year this decade, and only once have they been one and done, and that was back in 2010. You know, I look at this Titans team, and I have some trouble fully trusting Mike Vrabel, fully trusting everything, because the bottom line is with the Titans, it feels like from one week to the next, you do not know who the hell you're going to get. And you could say right now with the Patriots, you really don't know what you're going to get on offense, and that certainly is a valid point. But they're in New England. They've still got Brady. They've still got Belichick. That's got to count for something. I still got to roll with the Patriots. Like, history and precedent suggests this is a smart pick, even though the Titans feel like they have a lot of momentum. So give me the Patriots to win 23-20. Switching over to the Sunday games, the early game, you got the wild card Minnesota Vikings traveling to New Orleans in the Superdome to take on the AFC South champion Saints. The line on this game is pretty big with the Saints as 8-point favorites. Almost feels like that could be a little big, but maybe not. For the Vikings, when you look at it, going early in the season, the Bears kicked their ass in week 4, that 16-6 game. And you could really get the sense that they were really talking about the Vikings trying to hide Kirk Cousins, and they were really trying to play it as close to the vest as possible. And part of the problem with that is that their defense isn't as good as it's been in previous years. And now you've got guys like Diggs and Thielen on the outside. Well, now at least I would say you have the Diggs. You can't hide them. You paid Kirk Cousins all that guaranteed money. You got to start using them. And once they backed off of the scaredy cat game plan a little bit, it seemed to make a big difference. Sure, you still had Dalvin Cook, and he had a big year when he was on the field, and they're going to have him back for this wild card matchup. But they're going to go as far ultimately as Kirk Cousins can take them, and it'll be really interesting to see how he steps up and performs in a marquee matchup in the playoffs on the road against a future first ballot Hall of Famer and all-time great at the position in Drew Brees. And again, all the while with the Vikings defense, that's a good unit, but they're no longer a great unit, no longer a special unit. They can be had. And how are the Vikings going to be able to contain Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara? I think you've got Alvin Kamara building up some momentum here. All the while, that secondary can be had. The corners can be had for the Vikings. Michael Thomas, you would think, will be in line for potentially a really, really big game here. More importantly, you look at this and you say, is Danielle Hunter going to be able to get any pressure on Drew Brees? The Saints' offensive line is really, really good. And as a result, if they could keep Drew Brees protected and then give him time, they're going to be able to find holes in that Vikings defense. The Vikings could do some things that could bother the Saints a little bit. So I don't just want to sit there and say that the Vikings are just going to roll over and die here. That said, there's a part to me that wonders if the Saints are going to be really, really motivated. They've got another chance. They're in the dance again, trying to make up for the bad taste in their mouth for the past couple of years. I like the Saints in this matchup. Give me New Orleans 27-17. And then the last game of Wild Card Weekend, you've got the Seahawks as the wild card from the NFC West traveling to Philadelphia to take on the NFC least champ Philadelphia Eagles. Not surprisingly, because the Seahawks are a 12-win wild card, or 11-win, whatever the hell. Either way, they're a double-digit win wild card traveling to a 9-win NFC East champion. So not surprisingly, the Seahawks are 1-point favorites. And this is a rematch of a game we got about a month and a half ago in Week 12, where the Seahawks beat the Eagles 17-9. And again, that game was in Philly. Some things have changed for this matchup. The Seahawks are going to be without Dwayne Brown. In that game back in Week 12, you had Rashard Penny bust out a big 58-yard touchdown run, went over 120 yards rushing. He's now out for the season. You have no Chris Carson. He's out. So you're going to be rolling with Travis Homer and beast mode Marshawn Lynch. You also look at this. They may have Upati. They may not on that offensive line. Should have Jadeveon Clowney, which is going to be big for them because that defense of the Seahawks, which already has struggled this year and didn't exactly light the world on fire to close out the month of December, They need everybody that they can get in the fold. And talking about that December, this is a Seahawks team that did lose 3 of its last 4 games. Thankfully for them, I could argue that this game is on the road because they've been much better on the road than they were at home this year. Nonetheless, when looking at the Seahawks, a team that you're used to the formula of running the ball, playing great defense, Russell Wilson making big plays at big times, the whole dynamics of everything with the Seahawks have changed. The offense has to carry them because the defense is not very good. And how much do you really trust that Seahawks offense in the playoffs with this construction? I don't know. Be fascinated to see how DK Metcalf does in his first playoff action. Is he going to have a big game against that Philadelphia Eagles secondary that certainly can be beat, that certainly can be had? Perhaps he can. But when you look at the Eagles, the trouble for them is they're kind of a walking mash unit right now, specifically at wide receiver. There's no Alshon Jeffrey. There's no Nelson Aguilar. You look at them. You may have Zach Ertz. If you do have Zach Ertz, how effective is he going to be with the torso injuries, the rib injuries that he has? But you also look at this and you say, okay, are the Seahawks really going to be able to run the ball against this Eagles team that's going to have Fletcher Cox in the fold? They're third against the run on defense. And they've played each other a few weeks back. And looking at it, I also look a little bit to recent history and I say the Seahawks did well the first time around playing teams in the NFC West. Then when it came to December and they had to play everybody again, everybody beat them. The Rams beat them. Then the Cardinals beat them. And then in week 17, yeah, it was close and it was all this and all that. It was a phenomenal game. Ultimately, they came up short against the 49ers. So while I understand it is easy to look at the Eagles and say, there's all these injuries around Carson Wentz on that offense, and they're not a very good team in comparison to the Seahawks. You're absolutely correct. And you say the Seahawks are better on the road than they were at home this year, and that's also correct. And you say you would rather have Russell Wilson in a big spot than Carson Wentz. That's also correct. And all these other things that are pointing in one direction are leading me to go in the other direction, where I thought a few days ago this was going to be my lock, stock, and barrel, can't miss pick. I've now changed my mind. We're human. I'm inclined to do that. I like the Eagles in this matchup. I think Doug Peterson's a really good coach. I think Carson Wentz has done a good job. All the criticism he gets from Philly fans aside, he's done well considering what he's had to work with on the offensive side of the ball. I expect this to be a close kind of game, and in a close type of game, I'm going to like the team that I have more confidence in their running game. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to like the team that has the better defense, and by far that's the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are at home. I like the Eagles in this matchup. So give me the Eagles in an upset to win 17-13. So there you have it, my wild card round picks. You can give me your picks and let me know what you think about them in the comment section below. I guess we'll find out in a couple of days whether I'm a genius and brilliant or, more likely not, an idiot. Bye.